Bryce Laspisa's drive home should have ended in the ordinary. Instead, it unraveled into one of California's most confronting disappearances. He was a 19-year-old college student, hours from his parents, in frequent contact by phone, his location traced, and his voice heard. He made promises to sleep, paused for fuel, and spoke calmly to deputies. Yet somewhere on that final stretch, Bryce vanished, leaving authorities with a timeline but no answers. How does someone disappear when everyone knows where they are? Bryce Laspisa grew up in Laguna Niguel, a quiet suburb in Orange County, California. He was the only child of Michael and Karen Laspisa, a couple known for their steady support and close involvement in his life. Friends and neighbors described the family as tight-knit, with Bryce's parents always present at school events and eager to help with his interests. At home, Bryce was known for his artistic streak and sense of humor. He enjoyed drawing, working on computer graphics, and spending time with friends, traits that led him to study graphic design at Sierra College, a community college north of Sacramento. By the summer of 2013, Bryce had completed his freshman year and was living in an off-campus apartment near Rocklin, sharing the space with a roommate. He kept in regular contact with his parents, checking in by phone and making plans for visits home. According to those who knew him, Bryce had no history of running away or disappearing. His parents never reported any major conflicts or concerns, and there were no records of prior incidents with law enforcement. To everyone around him, Bryce appeared to be a typical 19-year-old, focused on his studies, maintaining friendships, and supported by a family that expected him home for the upcoming Labor Day weekend. Bryce stood out in a crowd, not just for his height or sharp blue eyes, but for the tattoo on his left shoulder, a Taurus bull's head marked with Roman numerals. Friends often mentioned it as one of his most recognizable features. As summer 2013 drew to a close, some of those closest to Bryce began noticing subtle shifts in his mood and behavior. According to reports, these changes became more apparent in the final days of August. His roommate Sean later told Bryce's mother that something seemed off. Bryce had started acting differently, quieter, sometimes withdrawn, and less engaged in the routines that once defined his day-to-day life. Others noticed he was packing only the essentials when preparing for his trip home, leaving behind most of his clothes and personal items at the apartment. He told Sean he would be back after Labor Day, but the way he moved through those last days left friends uneasy. No single event explained the change, but the pattern was clear enough to raise concern. The details would only become more troubling as the hours ticked by, setting the stage for a journey that would soon defy easy explanation. Bryce slipped out of his apartment in Rocklin late on August 28th, carrying only a few essentials. He told his roommate Sean he would be back after the holiday weekend, but left behind most of his belongings. The drive from Rocklin to Laguna Niguel should have taken less than 8 hours, yet Bryce's route unfolded in ways no one expected. At 1 a.m, Bryce called his mother. She believed he was still at home, but phone records placed him well south of Sacramento, already making his way down Interstate 5. This mismatch between what he said and where he actually was would become a pattern throughout the night. Sometime after sunrise, Bryce's journey stalled near Buttonwillow, a small stop along Interstate 5 in Kern County. He ran out of gas and called for roadside assistance using his parents' insurance. Christian, the owner of a local service station, responded to the call. He brought 3 gallons of fuel and found Bryce waiting calmly in his Toyota Highlander. Christian would later recall nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but Bryce did not immediately continue his trip. Instead, he lingered at the rest area for hours. As the day wore on, Bryce's parents grew uneasy. Insurance records alerted them to the fuel delivery, and they reached out to Christian, who checked again on Bryce mid-morning. Still, Bryce remained parked, making no move to leave Buttonwillow. The hours ticked by, and his location stayed the same, even as his parents tried to guide him home by phone. The reasons for these delays and Bryce's reluctance to press on remain as puzzling now as they did that morning. Late into the night, Bryce's car stayed parked in Button Willow, its engine off, while the world moved on around him. Hours slipped by. His parents, tracking his location from hundreds of miles away, grew more anxious with each unanswered call. By evening, their concern reached a point where distance was no longer an excuse. They contacted local authorities, asking Kern County deputies to check on their son. Deputies found Bryce still inside his Toyota Highlander, awake but subdued. According to their report, he was alert and polite. When asked what he was doing, Bryce said he just needed time to clear his head. The deputies saw no signs of intoxication, no evidence of distress that would require intervention. They urged him to call his parents and reassured them that he seemed safe. Before leaving, they watched as Bryce dialed his mother, following through on their request. On the phone, he insisted he was fine and promised he would continue driving home soon. But even after this check, Bryce lingered. His parents' worry did not fade. They stayed awake, calling him again and again, urging him to keep moving. Each time, Bryce's responses grew shorter, sometimes vague, as if he was drifting further away from the conversation. At 2:08 a.m., Bryce made one last call. He told his mother he was too tired to drive and would pull over to sleep. He promised to call in the morning. There was no panic in his voice, just exhaustion. That was the last time anyone heard from Bryce Laspisa. At first light on August 30th, California Highway Patrol officers spotted a black Toyota Highlander at the bottom of a steep ravine near Castaic Lake, just off Lake Hughes Road. An SUV had come to rest on its side, the rear window shattered, airbags deployed from the force of the crash. Inside, officers found Bryce's wallet, his cell phone, laptop, and a duffel bag containing the few essentials he had taken from his apartment. There was no sign of Bryce himself, no footprints leading away from the wreck, no blood or torn clothing, and no evidence suggesting which direction he might have gone. The discovery triggered an immediate response. Deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, search and rescue teams, and highway patrol officers converged on the area. Helicopters swept the hills and lake, while ground crews moved through the thick brush and rocky terrain. Divers combed the waters of Castaic Lake. Search dogs picked up a scent from the vehicle, tracking it up the embankment and across the dam toward a nearby truck stop before losing the trail. For days, the search grid expanded outward, covering the ravine, shoreline, and remote stretches of land. Yet, despite the scale of the operation, not a single piece of new evidence surfaced. Bryce Laspisa was simply gone. Over a decade later, Bryce Laspisa's disappearance continues to divide investigators and the public. With no definitive evidence and no clear motive, the case remains open to interpretation. One theory suggests Bryce may have chosen to walk away from his life. Supporters of this idea point to his light packing, the way he left behind most personal belongings, and the fact that no digital trail has ever surfaced, no bank withdrawals, no social media activity, and not even a phone ping after his car was found. Some reports say his repeated stops, vague phone calls, and the hours spent lingering in Button Willow could hint at a deliberate plan to vanish. Investigators have also considered a mental health crisis. Friends and family described sudden changes in Bryce's behavior in the days before he left. Some reports note his withdrawn mood and moments of confusion, raising questions about whether he was experiencing an acute episode. Detectives have pointed out that disorientation from a head injury or from psychological distress after the crash cannot be ruled out, especially since no evidence of substance use or a prior diagnosis has been confirmed. Another theory holds that Bryce may have suffered an accident or encountered foul play after leaving his vehicle. The steep terrain around Castaic Lake, combined with the absence of footprints or personal items leading away from the crash, has left this scenario unresolved. Law enforcement reported that search dogs lost his scent at a nearby truck stop, and no credible tips have surfaced since. Despite age-progressed images circulated by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and ongoing outreach from his family, Bryce's fate remains unknown. The investigation continues, but the mystery endures. A young man minutes from home, gone without a trace. Every year in the United States, over 600,000 people go missing, and thousands of cases remain unsolved, just like Bryce's case. For families, silence is not closure. As technology advances, hope persists. The unanswered questions keep pushing us to look closer, listen harder, and never forget those still missing.